Now, one thing we can all agree on, I think we're all keen on making our money go further, whether we choose to do things like buy fruit and veg when it's in season, or maybe you shop around with your utilities and get the best deal with the power companies. But there's one thing that many of us actually get caught up by. It's right under our nose. We don't even see it. It's our KiwiSaver fees, the fees that our KiwiSaver providers are charging us. Tom Hartmann from Sorted joins us again this morning to discuss. Good morning, Tom.
Hey, good morning. Great to be with you.
Now, is there quite a big difference in fees from different providers that they charge us, Tom?
Yeah, so here's the thing with KiwiSaver fees, and it's a little bit odd because it's the finance world is a bit bizarre in this sense. So imagine if you're, for example, walking into a bottle shop. The more you pay, you'd expect to get something better, right? And unfortunately, with KiwiSaver and investments, the more you pay, the less is coming back to you in terms of those returns. So actually, more is not more.
Okay.
Necessarily. It's kind of the opposite. And these fees are represented in tiny little percentage points, but they actually add up to tens of thousands of dollars. And we don't get a bill for that. We don't get an invoice to pay or anything like that. And so these are being taken out behind the scenes before they come into our accounts as returns. There is actually a certain percentage being taken off. And that's how, we're basically paying a fund manager to invest our money for us. That's how they make their living. That's how their business is sustainable. So that's all good. But to give you an idea, if I was looking at growth funds, for example, and over 40 years, if someone is investing in that, they might get a result that's anywhere between, on the low end, $220,000 to, on the high end, $625,000. So that's how much they could expect to grow their money. But how much would that cost? And so on the low end, the cheapest KiwiSaver funds, it might cost them about $10,000 over 40 years. But on the high end, it would cost them about $90,000 for the most expensive growth funds.
What did you say? What did you say the cheapest was again?
$10,000. So the most expensive one is 9 times as much as the cheapest one. Now, so there's a couple things to think about there on that. It's not necessarily going to the cheapest one is going to get you the best results. In fact, many fund managers say, well, actually, we're worth the fees that we charge. If you pay us a bit more, we're going to get a better return for you. And they might, but returns are a bit unpredictable, whereas fees are pretty predictable.
Right.
Which is why we can estimate for someone what they're going to pay from here to 65. And on Sorted, we've got this great tool called the KiwiSaver Fund Finder that we've mentioned before. Helps you find the KiwiSaver fund, but also lets you compare them in terms of how much in fees you might pay until you're 65.
Sure. So we're talking about the fees, and jeepers, from $10,000 to $90,000. That's huge. That's why I asked you to repeat it. I like you say, the performance, they're saying that we may be better. That's why you're paying us more. But really, instead of just looking at the fees, if we're looking at changing providers, we do want to look at past performance, don't we, of the provider, of the fund?
Yeah, so there's a few things we're looking at, and we've talked about this before. You want to get the type of fund, really, and that's the most important thing, because that sets your risk level. So you want to make sure that you're in the right type, whether it's balanced or growth. But then you want to look at the fees, whether they're reasonable.
Yep.
Then we also survey providers on the services they provide, and we give them a star system also in that tool. So that's another one. And then when you look at past performance, to your point, you just want to look at whether past performance has been below its peers.
Okay.
Because we can't tell the future on how performance is going to be, and how a fund has performed in the past might not be very well how it's going to perform in the future. So you don't want to pick a fund just based on how it's performed in the past.
Yeah. Do you see something like, I don't even know if you can answer this for me, but is there a bit of a trend that, say, maybe the banks charge more than other providers, or is there not a thing?
No. So providers are charged more when they have to do more work. And those who are called active managers, meaning that they're much more hands-on with the choices they're making on where your money is invested, they will typically charge more for doing that. And it makes sense. It costs them more.
Yeah.
On the low end, passive managers, which are funds that really track an index, they track an entire industry or entire geographic area, like the S&P 500 in the States. They just passively track them, get the same investments without a lot of analysis, without a lot of choice going on. Those are typically cheaper because the manager has to do less. And so on the low end, that's where you'll find that the cheaper funds are, and those tend, to track an index and do well. The active managers are saying, if you pay us a bit more, we'll put in a bit extra work, and we'll be able to outperform those index trackers there. The track record on whether they actually do that internationally is not great.
Okay.
You need to look into the individual funds on whether it's worth it, which is why seeing whether fees are reasonable or not is one of the really good ways to pick a KiwiSaver fund. It's one of the criteria that's more important than, for example, performance.
Sure.
In the past.
So say we've looked at this and we've gone, oh, look, that's charging much more than I think is reasonable. I've looked at their past performance and where they're measuring up. They're charging me more and they're not doing better. So I'm going to change, and I've decided on the provider that I want to go with. How easy is that process?
It's really simple. It's really as simple as changing a power provider or a mobile provider. Basically, you contact the new KiwiSaver fund manager, KiwiSaver provider that you want to move to.
Yeah.
You fill out some forms, and they do all of the work to make that transfer happen.
Oh, that sounds good.
and behind the scenes, so it's easy is the short answer to that. It's also easy to change funds within a provider. So say you're with a provider, you like them, but you notice that the fees and the risk level and the performance of another fund with them is better for you. It's even easier to make a change that way. Okay. But behind the scenes, these aren't savings accounts. So we're not just taking money from one account and moving into another. We're actually selling, for example, your shares and your bonds in one fund and actually buying in another. So fund managers are trained to make those changes for you. That's their business. And so they can make that happen smoothly.
Okay, that's good to know. So if you want to find out more, check out that KiwiSaver Fund Finder. As Tom said, we've mentioned it a few times. Sorted.org.nz. Tom Hartmann, thanks so much.
And keep an eye on those tiny little percentage points because they make tens of thousands of dollars of difference.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Sorted.org.nz.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you can catch all our interviews on Star. See you next time.